Great Gatsby. Glittering eggs. A la Shmoop.
We've talked about the time, the contemporary era. Let's talk about the place.
What's the difference between East Egg and West Egg?
I normally think of it as the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, because the East Coast is considered the old money, and then the West Coast is where kind of all these like crazy people went out west and then kind of created their own lives out there. Wherever it comes from, we have this idea that the East is this more traditional, and in this case, a traditional type of wealth, and then the West is a kind of a newer, kind of self-made wealth.
Got it. So we have the Buchanans and the Carrolls that are, centrist representatives of their domains in the East and West.
Can you compare and contrast the Buchanans and the Carrolls?
So yeah, the Buchanans, Daisy and Tom, live on East Egg. They are, old money. They have ponies, for example. Aww. And they have a very classy kind of way of living, and that's the way that Nick describes it. You kind of see that it is this kind of more classy, more traditional type of wealth. We think of people with ponies, like, when you make your first million, you don't go buy ponies. That's something that your mom and dad kind of gave you if you inherited the wealth. And then on the West Egg, Nick describes his house as an eyesore, and it's not. He lives, the West Egg is really nice, it's just new wealth, but he kind of is comparing it to the classy East Egg, and it's a little bit more gaudy, a little bit more tacky, the way that we would think of it now. And that's also where Gatsby lives, on West Egg, which is how we can kind of already start to see that there's something going on beneath the surface of Gatsby's greatness.
So you mentioned the term new wealth, which is a really interesting concept.
What's the difference between new money and old money?
As the American dream really became a thing, and in the kind of the early 1900s, that's when the American dream really took off as this concept. It started to change, and new money did become a little bit more respected as time passed. And now, like you said, we've gotten to the point where in some places that's all that's respected, and people will look down on old money. Although if you go to the East Coast and find some of these old money families, it still today they look down on the new wealth of the West Coast. So it's kind of that difference still exists, but the American dream hadn't quite been realized yet at that point, and so the idea of a self-made man wasn't as respected at that point.
Got it. Makes sense.
What's the difference between East Egg and West Egg? Can you compare and contrast the Buchanans and the Carrolls? What's the difference between new money and old money?